Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Chris and this video is participating in the Thrifted Thursday collaboration, which we'll get more into that later. But with all that being said, let's begin with DIY number 1. Alright, so I found this, I'm going to call it a finial. It's made out of resin. I so wish I could have found 2 of them because I think this is such a beautiful shape. But I am going to try to give it a patina look. And I have got this color Worn Penny from Deco Art. And I am going to cover this entire thing with that color. And I was actually pretty impressed on how well it went on. I decided not to prime the piece because I did not mind if some of the original state was popping through all of this. I just thought it would add to its charm. But like I said, I'm going to go over this entire piece. And as I'm putting this on, I am using one of my stencil brushes and I'm just mainly kind of pouncing it on. I just find that this technique prevents from getting a lot of streaking. And once that copper color is dried down, I'm going to take the color Sage, and this is a folk art chalk paint, and I also have a mister with some water in it. And I am just going to brush in spots this sage color, and then I'm going to spray some water on it so that way it will cause that paint to run. And I saw a technique similar to this from, what's her name? I'll put it here on the screen what her name is. And I thought, well, I'm going to give that a shot. I don't know that I necessarily used the same colors that she did because I can't even remember what those colors were. I just thought the technique of applying some water to the paint and having it run down was pretty neat. And so I do that in just some different spots, kind of tipping my piece this way and that way as the water's running. And then if I had any pools of water there at the bottom after I took my heat gun to it, then I'll just take a little wet wipe, just kind of blot some of that excess water off of the piece. And then I'll take my heat gun and dry it a little bit more. And I just kind of do that back and forth. Once we got it all dry, will you guys look how pretty that is? So I'm going to go ahead and take some clear wax from DIY and I'm going to put that all over my piece. And doing this is just going to help my next step. I do take a towel and I do kind of wipe back any of the excess wax on there. Now I'm going to take my Shipwrecked wax from DIY. Just going to put a little bit on my lid. I'm trying to do this so I don't contaminate my waxes, but sometimes I forget. But I'm going to take that Shipwrecked wax and I'm just going to go over my piece with this, and that's just going to add a darker blue than the one that we put on there originally. And I'm kind of going to do this in sections. I'm going to rub that on there all over a section, and then I'm going to take a microfiber cloth and then I'm going to kind of blot some of that off. And of course, I'm going to pick some little brush hairs out of there. I love the way these brushes work, but they put out so much bristles, it just drives me crazy. And here I go on the second section. And like I said, just cover the whole section and then blot it off. And that clear wax underneath is just going to help us be able to remove any of that unwanted shipwrecked wax from being on there. And once I finish getting this on, blotting it off, I'm going to set it aside to dry, but this project will be complete and I will have a photo at the end of each DIY. And then I'm going to have a little display of all 3 that I put together. So be sure to stay tuned to the end. Like I mentioned in the beginning, this video is in part of the Thrifted Thursday, which is hosted by my friends at Joanna's DIY Life and Sabrina's Craft Nanigans. Their links will be in my description box, so be sure to go check them out. Also, I will have a playlist link of all the other participants, so make sure you go and check them out as well, show them some love. And if you are coming in from the playlist, I hope you will consider hitting that subscribe button, become part of my DIY family. And for my returning subscribers, I love you guys. Now with all that being said, let's continue to DIY number 2. All right, so I found this shoe stretcher, shoe form, whatever you want to call it, at the Goodwill bins, and I was so excited to find it. I thought for sure I'd be able to resell it on one of my Whatnot auctions, but I have been unable to, so I'm going to go ahead and make it over. And I am going to start with the color Vintage Linen from DIY Paint, and I am going to cover all the bits and pieces that are wood toned, paying extra attention to make sure I don't get any on the black. If I do get any on the black, it's easy to wipe off because the DIY paint is water soluble, so just taking a wet rag will wipe that right off. And once I've got this all covered, I am going to go ahead and grab me a baby wipe, and I am going to wet distress this. I am first going to make sure I get any of that paint off of the little screws on the sides, clean up any paint that got on any of the black pieces. And then I'm going to go ahead and wet distress. I'm going to make sure I do around the edges and then just in random spots where I think it should look aged. And this paint is so easy to wet distress, especially if you do it right after you've got it dried down. It comes up very nicely. Once I have got that all distressed to my likings, I am going to go ahead and take my DIY clear liquid patina, and I am going to cover the painted surface with this in its entirety. Putting this liquid patina down at this point in time is just going to give me a good surface to apply a transfer. And I am going to grab an image out of the Traditional Pots transfer book from IOD. And I decided I liked the image with little cherubs in it. I just thought, oh, it's so cute and pretty. So we're just going to dress her on up. And I'm going to find center, and I'm just going to lay that down, starting in the center, rubbing it outward. Grab the little tool that IOD supplies you with every rub-on transfer book, and just going to start burnishing that image onto my piece. And once I give a first good thorough rub down, I like to go to one edge and start rubbing again and lifting up on that carrier sheet as I'm rubbing. That way I can see whether or not my image is being transferred. And you'll also notice that I could not fit the first letter of this transfer onto my piece, but that's okay. I think it's in French and I can't read French anyway, so it's all good. We're just going to continue rubbing and pulling up on that transfer sheet as we go. If you notice that there was a piece that did not rub down, just let that carrier sheet lay back down and rub some more. And just FYI, I am becoming quite a fan of rub-on transfers. They just add so much beauty to a piece. And once you pull that carrier sheet off, you're just going to take it and you're just going to kind of rub lightly over that image, making sure it is down completely. And then this little piece here, I'm just going to take and put on the handle. I thought, why not? Let's give the handle a little some love. And once I get that on, I am going to take some more of my liquid patina and I am going to put a coat of that over the entire piece again, and this project is complete. DIY number 3. All right, so I saved the best for last, and this picture frame I had purchased on a Whatnot auction, and I tried to resell it because I changed my mind of what I was going to do with it, and nobody wanted it, so I made the statement I'm going to upcycle it, and well, this is what I'm going to do. And I knew exactly what color I wanted to put on this. After a couple videos ago, I played around with Skeleton Key by DIY for the first time and found it to be a gorgeous color. So that's what I'm going to be using here. And I did start by putting that on, and then I realized, oh wait, I want to put some molds on here. So I had to wipe that back off, which it came off very easily. So that told me something else, which we'll be getting to here momentarily. And I'm going to be using the amazing Castement resin. This stuff sets up really quick, and you pretty much just mix equal parts of each bottle that they supply you with, stir it up, and then once it feels warm, that's when you know it's ready to pour. Don't let it get too warm or it will start drying in your mixing container. Ask me how I know. And I will say the one thing I did find that I dislike about other molds compared to IOD's molds is that IOD gives you measurements on the molds of how much to mix up, where these do not. So I had to guess. So I ended up having quite a bit left over. I did go ahead and use the 2 bottom ones and the one in the middle. And then because I had so much left over, I just finished filling up whatever I could, and I'll just place those in a container and set aside in case I need them later. But you see how fast some of those will start to dry. And I have learned that the larger the mold is, the quicker it dries. So if you have something with a lot of detail and it's smaller and finer, it takes just a little longer to dry. As you can see, the first ones I poured, those are taking a little time to set up, but that's because they have such small detail in them. But I'm going to let these sit for about 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes, I go ahead and pull my castings out. And once I get my castings out, I'm trying to figure out how I want these laid out. If I want these pieces on the top or the bottom. Sorry, I'm out of frame on the bottom there, but I think the top's perfect. And I'm going to use Quick and Thick, smooth that all over with my fingers. And then I'm going to place this right in the top center. And because this is still pliable, I am going to kind of mold that to form around my frame, making sure I have all the areas stuck. And sorry if you hear noise in the background, my dogs are in the other room playing, and they'll probably run through here. And once I get that top piece on there, I am going to go ahead and proceed to do the same thing with the bottom pieces. So while those molds are drying onto the frame, the backing here, I want to put a photo on it, and I can't very well use that backing as is. So I thought, okay, well, let me grab one of these 8x10 canvases that you can find at the Dollar Tree. And I'm not sure how much of the canvas I'm going to need. I just know that I'm going to need more than what's folded around the top. So I want to be careful when I pull out the canvas. So I don't want to cut it. So I'm going to go around and I am going to pull out all of those staples. And I'm just going to use one of those little staple removers that you can find in the office supply section, I guess. I don't know. I've had it forever. And I'm going to first take a lint roller and just roll over that backing. Make sure there's any dust pulled up from it because I am going to be using some Mod Podge. I go ahead and put a nice even layer over the backing. And I'm just trying to do this as quick as I possibly can before it starts to dry. And then I'm just going to go ahead and place the backing onto the back of the canvas and smooth it out with my hands. And then I'm going to take my brayer and just roll it across, making sure I've got the entire surface laid down and smoothed out. Then I'm going to pull up around the edges just to make sure I have got enough of that Mod Podge around the corners especially. And then I'll go back over it with my brayer and I'll set that aside to dry. And then I'm going to go back to my frame and I'm going to go ahead and take my 2-in-1 primer from Couture and I'm going to go ahead and cover my frame with a good coat. And I decided to do this because that frame is real slick and I'm just afraid that my paint's going to wipe off of it too easily. So that's why I decided to use this primer. And I love this primer. It works great. And after that primer has had a chance to dry, I am then going to take my color Skeleton Key and I'm going to go over that. And once I've got the Skeleton Key dried down, which I do use my heat gun, I'm going to go over it with some white wax, especially around the casting that we put down. And I did put down a clear wax first. I forgot to mention that. And once I get the white wax down, I'm going to take a baby wipe and just kind of blot off any of the excess. And I'm also going to apply some of that white wax around the rest of the frame and wiping off any of the excess. And then I'm going to take my gold gilding wax. And I know this stuff, I believe, is discontinued. I'm just going to take some on my fingertip and just go over the castings with that gold. All right, and I'm going to set that aside to dry, and then I'm going to go back to my canvas. I'm going to go ahead and use my little fabric cutter and just go around the edges, removing any of the excess canvas from the backing. And I am going to go ahead and pull out some saran wrap and I'm just going to cover a little stand piece just to make sure I don't get any more gunk on it. It just hangs down a little bit too low, and I just didn't want to take a chance of getting anything on it. And I'm going to go ahead and grab the color Buttercream from Paint Couture, and I'm going to go ahead and paint that onto the canvas. And these two colors, the Buttercream and the Skeleton Key, they are perfect contrasting colors. And once I get the paint on there nice and smoothly, I'm just going to dry it down with my heat gun. Next, I am going to grab the Charlotte stamp from IOD. I have been dying to use this. And when I decided to upcycle this picture frame, I knew exactly who I wanted to put in it. So I'm just getting an idea of where I am going to want to put that stamp. And I think I want her a little onto the side here. Now, the great thing about these stamps is they've got these masks, and it makes it easy to get an idea of how you want your picture laid out, but it also allows you to use multiple stamps by covering up your image. So I'm going to take the color Stone Gray. This is ink from IOD, and I'm just going to cover that along my stamp, wipe up any excess, and I'm just using my baby wipe. And I am just going to lay that down onto my canvas, take my hands and my fingers and just rub over, trying not to push too hard because I have found that when you push too hard, it gets smudgy. I did order me a little stamp press. It's supposed to be here sometime this week. So next time you see me do one of these large ones, you're going to see me using that. And once I get that stamp pushed on, would you look how pretty that is? Now I am going to take my baby wipe and I'm going to go ahead and make sure I clean all that ink up. Now I am going to take the mask and I'm going to set it on top of my image once the image has dried. And then I'm going to grab my Kindest Regards stamp and black ink. I'm just going to cover the section that I want to use on that stamp, wipe up any of the excess, line it up right where I want it, making sure that the mask is still in place because I don't want to get any of this ink on Charlotte. And then I'm just going to lay it down and kind of rub and tickle my fingers over the image. And just to let you know, I will be selling all these items on an upcoming Whatnot show this Sunday at 2:30. Hope you can make it. And looky there, it's so pretty. And I didn't show it, but I did ink up a little bit more of that Kindest Regards stamp and put a little more down there on the bottom left section where it's bare right now. All right, so the next thing, I am going to grab some transfers from the Rose Botanical transfer book from IOD and just figure out where I want those. And once I figure that out, I'm just going to lay it there and I'm going to go ahead and burnish that on. And as I'm burnishing down, I'm just going to pick a corner, start burnishing in that spot and lifting up as I go. This will help that image transfer better. And then you'll also be able to see what's not transferring. And if it's not, just lay that back down and burnish some more. And while I'm thinking about it, guys, make sure you go and check out the playlist in my description box. Show all these other creators some love. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time and spending it watching this video with me. I really, truly appreciate it. And since some of that transfer just kind of overlapped, I just took my little sanders, sanded it off. If I couldn't get it off, I just laid it. I figured, it doesn't really matter. But I didn't want too much hanging over. And because this is going to be going inside a glass, I'm not going to worry about putting any kind of sealer on it. But I am going to go ahead and take that glass piece. I'm going to take some alcohol and a coffee filter, and I'm just going to clean that glass up as good as I can, making sure to get all the fingerprints and haziness off of it. And so I'm going to just reassemble this frame, and I was really worried. This was a struggle to get in there. I guess once I put that canvas in, I should have test fitted it to see if I needed to trim up anywhere. I did not. So I was getting this back in that frame and I had to push and push and push. And it was a struggle, but I got it in there and it's not coming out. So I was going to sell it as hey, you can put a picture in front of this if you wanted to, but no, it's not coming out. And then this project is ready to be displayed. And thank you guys once again for watching, and I will see you next week. And don't forget to tell me which one of these three was your favorite, and I think you can pretty much guess which one is mine. Have a great week, guys. Bye-bye.